In a quiet rural area of Fannin County, Texas, three young brothers went out onto a frozen pond. None of them were older than 10. The ice gave way beneath their feet, and all three slipped into the freezing water. They never resurfaced. Hundreds of miles away in Floral Park, New York, a retired police officer walked through deep snow toward his church. He collapsed outside after shoveling the entrance and died before help could arrive. In Kansas, a 28-year-old teacher was discovered frozen in an open field, less than the length of 3 football fields from where she had last been seen alive. These deaths were not isolated tragedies. They were part of a growing toll from Winter Storm Fern, a massive winter weather system that, in less than a week, claimed at least 119 lives across 13 states. At the height of the storm, more than 1 million customers lost power, many of them in southern states unprepared for prolonged freezing temperatures. Even after the snowfall ended, the danger continued as bitter cold settled in and electricity remained unavailable for hundreds of thousands of households. Winter Storm Fern was not a single-type weather event. According to the National Weather Service, it simultaneously functioned as a major snowstorm in the Midwest and Northeast, a crippling ice storm across the South, and a widespread Arctic cold outbreak, affecting nearly the entire continental United States. The scale of impact prompted 24 state governors to issue emergency declarations, while 12 federal disaster declarations were approved, unlocking emergency funding and resources for states including Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia at its peak. Winter weather alerts covered as many as 230 million people, meaning nearly 2/3 of the U.S. population was under some form of warning. Preliminary damage estimates have already exceeded $1 billion, with economic impact still being assessed. On January 25th, more than 10,000 flights were canceled in a single day, making it one of the most disruptive weather days for air travel in U.S. history. The storm's origins trace back to January 22nd, when a cold core low-pressure system developed over the Pacific Ocean and moved southeast toward the Baja California Peninsula. To better understand its potential, NOAA deployed a Gulfstream 4SP research aircraft directly into the storm, collecting data to refine forecasts. By midday on January 23rd, the system strengthened significantly as it crossed the Great Plains, merging with a broad atmospheric trough stretching across the Rockies. This storm was driven by a distortion in the upper atmosphere, where a wave elongated the polar vortex, normally centered over northern Canada and Alaska. That elongation allowed frigid Arctic air to surge southward over a massive portion of North America. As this air collided with warm, moisture-rich flow from the Gulf of Mexico, the result was an extraordinary mix of snow, freezing rain, and dangerous cold extending from Texas to Maine. Satellite imagery from NASA revealed a nearly continuous snow band stretching diagonally across the continent, impacting more than 30 states. When indirect impacts are included, officials estimate that close to 40 states experienced effects from Fern. What made the storm remarkable was not only its size, but its continuity. This was not a collection of separate storms, but a single connected system affecting the nation from border to border. Snowfall totals range from 1 to 2 feet in many locations, breaking daily records that had stood for over a century. In the Southwest, heavy snow blanketed mountain ranges in New Mexico and pushed into West Texas. Dallas recorded 2.4 inches of snow, enough to shut down major highways and disrupt daily life in a city unaccustomed to winter precipitation. But as the storm moved eastward, snow was only part of the danger. The most destructive phase emerged as ice spread across the southern United States. In parts of Alabama, South Carolina, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Mississippi, a full inch of ice accumulated. Ice of this thickness turns trees into collapsing hazards and power lines into breaking points. Branches snapped under the weight, utility poles fractured, and transmission lines failed. Southern infrastructure, designed for heat rather than prolonged cold, proved especially vulnerable, setting the stage for cascading failures that would follow. As Winter Storm Fern pushed deeper into the central United States, its effects intensified across the plains and Midwest. In Oklahoma City, 4.4 inches of snow fell on January 24th, breaking a daily snowfall record that had stood since 1948. Farther east, Little Rock, Arkansas, recorded 6.0 inches by Saturday morning, shattering a daily record set in 1899, a record that had survived 127 years. The National Weather Service later reported a combined total of 10.6 inches of snow and sleet in parts of the region. These conditions quickly turned deadly. In Saline County, Arkansas, a 17-year-old boy was killed after striking a tree while riding a sled pulled by an ATV. In a separate incident in the same county, an 11-year-old child died in another ATV-related accident. These were not freak occurrences, but predictable outcomes of icy roads, poor visibility, and the false sense of safety that often follows snowfall. In the upper Midwest, the storm's most lethal weapon was cold. Temperatures plunged to 40 degrees Fahrenheit in parts of Minnesota, with wind chills reaching similarly dangerous levels in Duluth and Minneapolis. Eastern Iowa experienced wind chill values below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, conditions capable of causing frostbite in minutes. Meteorologists warned that exposed skin could freeze in as little as 5 to 10 minutes. For the first time since January 2014, the entire lower 48 states were forecast to experience their coldest average low temperature, estimated at minus 9.8 degrees Fahrenheit. This extreme cold transformed power outages from inconveniences into life-threatening emergencies, especially for older adults, infants, and individuals with medical conditions. As the storm moved toward the East Coast, it transitioned into a powerful nor'easter, striking some of the most densely populated regions in the country. Central Park in New York City recorded 11.4 inches of snow, setting a new daily record. Philadelphia received 9.3 inches, its highest total since Winter Storm Jonas in 2016. Baltimore's BWI Airport measured 11.3 inches, also a decade high. In Boston, 23.2 inches fell over 2 days, making it the city's 9th snowiest storm on record. For New York City and Philadelphia, this marked the heaviest snowfall in 5 years, overwhelming transit systems and emergency services. Aviation infrastructure across the nation collapsed under the strain. According to FlightAware, more than 11,400 flights were canceled on January 25th alone. At LaGuardia Airport, nearly 90% of flights were canceled, while Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport saw 99% cancellations. NO Airline was hit harder than American Airlines, which operates 5 of its 9 major hubs directly within the storm's path. Between January 23rd and January 26th, the airline canceled more than 9,000 flights, representing the most significant operational disruption in its 100-year history. Company estimates place revenue losses between $150 million and $200 million. While flight cancellations made headlines, the most serious consequences were measured in lives. The exact death toll remains uncertain, varying by reporting methodology. As of January 30th, Wikipedia listed 119 confirmed fatalities. CBS News confirmed at least 76 deaths directly linked to storm conditions, with officials investigating dozens more. The Associated Press reported at least 42 deaths. Despite differences in counting methods, all sources point to the same conclusion. Winter Storm Fern killed between 76 and 119 people across at least 13 states in less than 1 week. The discrepancy lies in how deaths are classified, particularly whether indirect causes, such as carbon monoxide poisoning, heart attacks during snow removal, or medical equipment failures during outages are included. What remains consistent is the human cost behind the numbers. In Frisco, Texas, 2 teenagers died when a sled being pulled by a vehicle struck a curb and a tree. In Ponder, Texas, a high school senior was killed in another sledding incident. In Pennsylvania, 3 elderly individuals died while removing snow. In New Jersey, a man was found dead with a shovel still in his hand. In Massachusetts, a woman was struck and killed by a snowplow while walking with her husband. These incidents illustrate how danger persisted long after snowfall began and even after it ended. The full scale of Winter Storm Fern's destruction became clear only after electricity failed across wide sections of the South. At the peak of the crisis, more than 1 million customers lost power, many of them in states where homes are not designed to retain heat during prolonged freezes. The Tennessee Valley Authority reported that over 24 major transmission lines collapsed, cutting off power to smaller utilities across Mississippi, Tennessee, and Louisiana. When those transmission lines failed, entire regions were left without any source of electricity. Energy, the primary power provider for much of Louisiana, parts of Texas, and Mississippi, reported 171,000 customers without power at peak impact. The company documented damage to 30 transmission lines, 860 utility poles, and 60 substations. Energy CEO Philip May warned customers that full restoration would not be possible accessible until January 31st, and even that timeline depended on weather conditions. By January 30th, more than 220,000 customers were still without electricity. Tennessee and Mississippi each reported over 80,000 homes and businesses still in the dark. In these conditions, exposure became deadly. Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky warned that being outside for 10 to 30 minutes could result in hypothermia or frostbite. Rural areas faced the longest restoration times, with repair crews struggling to reach down lines on icy back roads. In Louisiana, 2 deaths were reported in DeSoto Parish alone, one from carbon monoxide poisoning after a generator was used indoors, and another after an oxygen concentrator failed during the outage. In Fort Worth, police found a woman dead in an open field and a man deceased inside a tent, both believed to have died from exposure to the cold. One of the most widely shared stories came from Floral Park, New York. Roger McGovern, a 60-year-old retired NYPD sergeant, father of 3, and longtime church volunteer, walked about a mile through deep snow to Our Lady of Victory Church. His intention was simple: shovel the walkways so others could attend services. He collapsed while clearing snow and died before reaching the hospital. A family friend later said this act of service was typical of him. As emergency crews worked non-stop, shelters filled across the region. Families slept on cots in gyms and community centers, many unsure when they could safely return home. Hospitals faced another quiet emergency: blood shortages. Since January 23rd, more than 500 blood drives were canceled nationwide, resulting in the loss of over 20,000 units of blood and platelets. National blood supplies dropped by roughly 1/3 in a matter of weeks, even as hospitals prepared for increased trauma cases and cold-related illnesses. This layered crisis, power failures, medical shortages, transportation breakdowns, revealed how interconnected modern systems truly are. When electricity fails, healthcare falters. When roads close, emergency response slows. When power remains out for days, cold becomes lethal. Yet even as recovery efforts continued, meteorologists warned that the danger was not over. This layered crisis, power failures, medical shortages, transportation breakdowns, revealed how interconnected modern systems truly are. When electricity fails, healthcare falters. When roads close, emergency response slows. When power remains out for days, cold becomes lethal. That as communities struggled to recover from Fern, forecasters began tracking another developing threat offshore. A rapidly strengthening coastal system was expected to intensify into a bomb cyclone during the weekend of February 1st to 2nd. The Weather Channel named it Winter Storm Gianna. Forecast models indicated snow accumulations exceeding 6 inches in parts of North Carolina and Virginia, with wind gusts approaching 70 miles per hour along the coast. Emergency managers warned that trees weakened by ice from Fern could fall more easily under strong winds. Roofs already carrying heavy snow loads could face structural stress. Power lines that had just been repaired risked failing again. Governors in North and South Carolina extended emergency orders. Along the Outer Banks, officials warned that Highway NC-12, a critical lifeline for barrier island communities, could be overtopped by storm surge and waves, potentially cutting off access to fuel, food, and medical supplies. Farther south, farmers in Florida's citrus belt monitored forecasts closely, concerned that extended freezes could damage or destroy crops, adding agricultural losses to an already severe economic toll. Utility companies faced a race against time. Crews repairing Fern's damage were simultaneously being repositioned to respond to Gianna. Mutual aid agreements sent line workers across state lines. Bucket trucks were staged along major highways, and grid operators warned of potential rolling outages as heating demand surged. The Department of Energy issued emergency orders allowing power plants to operate beyond normal environmental limits to stabilize the grid. Economists at Bank of America estimated that Winter Storm Fern alone could reduce first quarter 2026 economic growth by 0.5 to 1.5 percentage points. What Fern ultimately exposed was not a new vulnerability, but an old one magnified by scale. Much of the U.S. power grid relies on infrastructure designed in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Power poles were never intended to support an inch of ice. Southern states lack extensive snow removal fleets. Transportation systems depend on single highways and centralized hubs that fail under stress. In less than 1 week, a single storm system disrupted power, transportation, healthcare, and supply chains across nearly the entire country. The greatest burden fell on the elderly, children, children, the chronically ill, and those with limited resources. The children lost in Texas, the teacher in Kansas, the retired officer in New York. None of these deaths were inevitable. Each reflects choices about preparedness, infrastructure investment, and community support. As extreme winter events become more disruptive, the question remains, how should communities prepare differently before the next storm arrives?